Welcome to episode 6 for our 7 City student podcast, bouncing off the series on how to live authentic for Jesus. My name is Caleb.
And I'm Brian.
And we are here to represent to you just some deeper content for the book of 1 Timothy and the things that we've been diving in through there of how to live an authentic life for Jesus. We've talked about a lot of things.
A lot. It's been a lot, too.
Yes, it has been. We've talked about prayer, false teaching. Grace was... If you didn't watch episode 2, you're missing out. Yeah. God really spoke. Because really, it's not really about us. We're just sinful human beings, just like everyone else. But God was definitely very present in that conversation. And today is about compassion. And before we dive into it, I got some words for Bucky. He did something last episode, if you didn't see. I felt embarrassed. He shared some things that I think he should not have shared publicly on recording. But we were going to ship him out, which is why he's in a box. We're going to think about it. We'll get back to it at the end of the episode.
We're still debating.
We're still processing.
Yeah. That was a big uh-oh, bro.
Don't look at us like that.
Right. Don't side-eye me like that, bro.
Dude, what the... Brother,
That's crazy. Brother,
what? Anyway, that's just why Bucky's in a box right now. He's been everywhere, honestly, throughout this whole series, on this desk and on this bookshelf, and it has been a little bit stressful. But yes, Bucky, we're not going to forget the random... Stop trying to speak for me.
Right. Just be patient, bro. It's coming.
Patience.
Come on,
Jeez.
man. It's the fruit of the Spirit.
Gosh. Anyway, Bucky's right. Before we dive into today's segment, we do have the random question of today. Now, this one's a little bit different. It's not really a question. Well, I guess it is, but it pertains to just us sharing our experience and us bringing out our inner unk. our inner uncle in us, because apparently we're unks, as Ashton Lee says, as other people say, and we're unks apparently. Shout out to you, Ashton. Jeez. Okay. What was your first experience with social media?
My first experience ever with social media was middle school. I want to say 6th or 7th grade.
Do you mind I ask what year?
2006.
Okay, so for context, 2006.
Yes, that might be beyond unk, but I digress. MySpace. I don't know if you guys even know about MySpace, but judging by the way Caleb said, "Wow," I don't think that definitely was.
We are not moving parts. Just for context.
MySpace was that was like if you were the cool kid, or if you were a cool kid, you had a MySpace, and Tom was on your friends list automatically because he created MySpace. But so those were the days though, because you had a top friend list, right? You could choose your friend, and it was
you had to be selected.
Exactly, you had that choice, right? Mm-hmm. And I usually had a top 8. Tom, he's a creator. He's good. I kicked him off. Yeah, right. But the thing, the crazy thing about MySpace is, if one of your top friends act up, you just remove them. And so yeah, if MySpace were still alive and Bucky were using it, and what he did last week, bro would have been kicked, booted, 100%. Yeah. So those were the days. And then you had blogs. You had photo comments. I guess similar to Facebook, but man, those were the days, man. We're not going to talk about AOL Instant Messenger because that's another thing that shows my age. Stop, bro.
Yeah. Even know.
What about you?
My first experience was Vine.
Oh, yeah.
Vine. I don't know when that came out, but when I finally got my first phone, which was iPhone 6S. That was my first phone. And that was actually the most selling phone at that time because they increased the screen size. There's my nerd coming out. Just, yeah. I got Vine. I wasn't allowed to do Facebook, and I wasn't allowed to do Instagram.
Yeah.
But Vine came out, and it was 6 seconds of the funniest clips alive.
Yeah.
Amazing content. Now, some of it was inappropriate. That was my my BC area, my before Christ era. So, but it was like, I will say it is the modern day TikTok.
Yeah, absolutely.
Instead of swiping down, you swiped left or right. But they would just, you had to find the funniest clips. They had to make you laugh in 6.5 seconds.
Exactly.
So that brings purpose to it. And that's where Logan Paul came from. That's where Jake Paul came from. That's where King Batch came from. All these creators that I used to watch as a kid. And those are one of the greatest moments, because then when I would try to make a Vine, by the time that I even finish recording, like or set a sentence, it's done. Yeah. And I realized I can't do that. I cannot make the content that these guys are making in 6 seconds. Yeah. It was hilarious.
It's hard. Like, I can't even imagine. Like, you got to have a super creative mind.
And then, Bucky's, what were yours? Ha! You thought you could answer. That's hilarious. Oh, my gosh. It's they're there. You don't even have a phone, do you? That's what I thought.
Poor guy.
Well, that was our random question segment of today. We are going to dive into, though, the topic about compassion today, which is what was discussed the previous Sunday when discussing about compassion. And this stems from a passage in 1 Timothy chapter 5, where Paul is basically describing caring for the people in the church, caring for widows, caring for the elderly, and telling young people, please be respectful, please be modest with your character. Which really a lot of this stuff ties in together. Grace, character, being shaped. But compassion is very interesting. Because we live in a culture now where that isn't really shared.
No, not at all.
And so then there becomes the question of, like, why? Paul is telling this church to show compassion. A church. Mm-hmm. He's not telling a club, unbelievers. He's telling Christians. Yeah. Show compassion. Why is this so hard? Why is it so hard to show compassion?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the easiest answer, we're all sinners. All sinners, and it's hard to put other people's interests before our own, right? It's hard to relate to someone else's emotions if it doesn't interest us, if it doesn't intrigue us. And that's why it's hard to show compassion, especially nowadays. Like, think of worldly culture. We're called to follow our own hearts as worldly wisdom. That has no regard for anyone else. You know, it's just all self. So it's pride. Yeah.
I mean, one of the things that we're going through as a church as a whole, we're going through this series of living the journey. And one of the messages that will be on there is reaching one more. And that's showing compassion, because you want to reach more people, moved with compassion. And Jesus was moved with so much compassion, he would go to people who did not care for him, or go to people who would not give any benefit. And I think you're right. It's because we're sinners, and it's also, we aren't going to show compassion unless we get something. Be honest, I did this as a kid. I would make sure I said thank you when I would get birthday gifts and Christmas gifts from family members, because I'm like, that means I'll get them again next year. And so I would always say, like, thank you, you're welcome, be real nice to him, just so I can get another gift. And God was like, what if they don't give you a gift? Will you still be compassionate? And it's that moving with compassion. And I think it's pride, selfishness. And I think it's also being unaware of people. Like, we're so focused on ourselves that we are not aware of what people go through. If the 10 people you encounter in public actually shared what they were going through, the judgment will go away and compassion will just overflow. Wow, his husband, his wife, XYZ got cancer, sickness is happening. Like, we would show more compassion if we actually knew, if we asked people, if we sat down, and if we listened to people. I think that would actually help with us showing compassion.
Yeah, absolutely.
I also think, though, our own experience with God's compassion. And, you know, we talked about sharing this, but, like, what is your experience with God's compassion? Because we could talk about this for days, of the endless compassion that God has shown us. But one of the best ways for us to show compassion to others is going back to the one who loved us first. So what has been your experience with just God's compassion that he's shown over your life over and over?
I remember times where I I feel like it was brushed upon before, but let's dig into it a little deeper. The times where I would literally cry out to God, the times of hopelessness, if you will, right? That's where God comes in, and it's because of his compassion that I'm out. Like, he's the one that pulled me out of that. And once we can see the magnitude of that compassion that God showed us, like, of course we're going to want to share that, right? Like, why wouldn't we want to share the goodness of God if it can heal someone else's soul, heal someone else's circumstances? Like, they could have eternal joy rather than circumstantial happiness. So I know I'm speaking a lot, but man, God's
think
compassion.
about how it's moved us. Yeah. Like, compassion's moved you in hopelessness. And I can agree with that. There have been plenty of moments where I felt down, depressed, like, God, where are you? And he's like, I'm here. Yeah. He's even given me people in my life to be like, I'm giving you this person in your life for them to show compassion to you. Yeah. It's like, God, you don't even have to do that. You've already given me your son. Yeah. And I think it's hard for us sometimes to just accept that compassion through his son, because we still live in a very sinful world. So if we are on a Sunday morning like, yes, Jesus, you died for me, I can't believe how compassionate you are. Monday morning, we get hit in the face with people being bitter to us, people hurting us. It will lead us to then not want to be compassionate. And unfortunately, that is society all throughout everywhere. And so one of the ways that we can show compassion is by seeing what God has told us to do. And I know there's a piece of scripture that you've wanted to share in the book of Ephesians, and I think that this will really encourage a lot of people as well.
Yeah. So this is from Ephesians 4, verse 31 and 32. Let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and slander be put away from you, along with all malice. Be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving each other, just as God in Christ also has forgiven you. And I think that sometimes we can take that forgiveness for granted. We could take the fact that God came down and served. He came, clothed himself with humility and humanity, just to be obedient, to die on the cross, and so that we could be reconciled. If that's not the greatest act of love and compassion, I don't know what is, right? So we take for granted that, and it's because of our sin nature, of course, but once we shift it goes back to perspective of how do I show compassion the way God does, that's when we can really shift our outward love.
I'm glad that you mentioned that shift of perspective, because I think that that's what we need. If the more that we focus on God and on ourselves, we are able to now show compassion to others and other people. We're just supposed to show compassion to everyone despite of their response. And so our challenge for you guys is to show compassion to others who may even talk down to you, who may even be bitter or angry, because we were once enemies of God as well. And Romans 5:10 talks about how we were once enemies and sinners of God, but he died for us. Yeah. And if God had the whole ability to not show compassion to us at all because we were against him, but he continued to do that.
Yeah, that's good.
So we just want to challenge you guys to show compassion to others, to pray for your heart to be open for other people in that. I think we can conclude the episode, right?
I think we gotta show some compassion ourselves here, bro.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, Bucks. Hey, Bucky. What you did last week was not good. Out of line.
Out of pocket, even.
Make me emotional.
Oh, man.
But God showed a lot of compassion to us.
Yeah.
You're forgiven.
Yeah.
And we will show compassion to you and not ship you out.
Nope. You're staying, bro.
You're staying. I will now remove you from the box. We will not ship you out. We will put you back where you were.
You're home, buddy.
You're home. Now, if you dare act out